Redshift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. I don't think the live-in concubines thing in a MGTOW commune would necessarily work unless they hired professional prostitutes to be the live-in concubines. If you did that, then it might work, because being a live-in concubine is a step up for a prostitute. Instead of having sex with a bunch of clients, she can instead only have sex once a day or so. Or maybe twice a day, but, only with three guys, the same three guys. And, maybe they'd swap her for another group of three guys in the commune every year, every other year, but it's still way better than being a prostitute. Plus, she doesn't have to deal with the violence or the possible diseases or accidental pregnancies or legal dangers if she's doing the live-in concubine thing. Legal dangers meaning like getting arrested for prostitution. If she's being a live-in concubine, she doesn't have to worry about any of those possible downsides of being a prostitute, right? And if she's a prostitute, she probably can't have kids. Or if she's doing prostitution instead of a live-in concubine thing, she probably won't be able to have kids, because that would lower her desirability, right? If she's pregnant, no one wants to fuck her, and then how is she going to make a living, right? But the guys in the commune, some of them would probably want to have kids, and so they're willing to have, if they're willing to have kids with her, even though she's a former prostitute, then they'd take care of her for that reason too, and then they'd also take care of her after she loses her looks, because she's being the mother to their children. And because, that's part of the deal, and that's better because, if you're a 50 or 55-year-old prostitute, who's going to want to have sex with you? Who's going to pay you for that, right? So how are you going to live? I don't even know how prostitutes live after they get, more than 45 years old or more than 40 years old. It's crazy to me, right? Like, how do they even live? But if she lives in a concubine and they're willing to keep taking care of her after she loses her looks, then that's way better than being a prostitute in that respect as well, right? So yeah, I think there's way more upsides to being a live-in concubine than being a prostitute. So, but you'd probably want to get a woman who was a prostitute before, because then she has no pair bonding ability left. So then she's not going to fall in love with any of the guys in the commune. You see, but for a regular girl, being a live-in concubine would be a step down compared to being in a serious relationship or getting married. Right, like, even if it's not a step down to a regular girl to be a living concubine because of her having flexible morals, she doesn't view it as a step down. It's still a case of, like, since she's a regular girl, she might develop feelings for one of these guys, or maybe two of them, or maybe all three. But maybe because she develops feelings for them, that makes them develop feelings for her. And now guys are competing over this woman who they're supposed to be impartially sharing and who they're not supposed to have feelings toward. People are notoriously bad at preventing themselves from developing romantic feelings toward people who they're not supposed to. People even sleep with coworkers despite the fact that it could get them fired. They're putting themselves basically at risk of ending up on the street, and yet they do it anyway. That's how hard it can be to prevent yourself from developing feelings for someone, unless you're a literal clinical, genetic psychopath. But if you're not a psychopath, it can be difficult to prevent yourself from developing feelings for someone. All right? I'm not saying it's always difficult. I'm just saying, like, sometimes it's difficult. Right? I'll go so far as to even say that it's impossible to stop yourself from developing feelings for someone. Yeah, sometimes, right? Especially if you're sleeping with them on a regular basis. The only thing you can do is stop the feelings from developing further by cutting off all contact with that person who you're starting to develop feelings toward, because that will arrest the development of the feelings. It'll halt the development of the feelings. But other than that, the only thing you can do is just not act on the feelings. But stopping the feelings from arising is basically impossible unless you cut off all contact with that person. So I think it might very well be the case that live-in concubines in a MGTOW commune might not work at all, because of those men developing feelings for those concubines, even though it's totally against the rules. It's lacking in self-respect, it's gynocentric, it's destructive to the community, etc. Those men would still not be able to prevent themselves from developing feelings for those women. Unless everyone in the commune was a hardcore red pill guy from birth, one of those guys who's a borderline psychopath, like if the guys are like hardcore red pill and they're like genetic psychopaths or genetic partial psychopaths, and they don't love anyone, and they've never loved any woman in their whole life, then if the commune were filled with guys like that, then it would have a good chance of not developing any problems of attachment to the woman, or to the women, right? Only then would the guys not develop feelings for the living concubines who live in the commune. It's not just women who end up falling in love with their fuck buddy, it's guys too. I mean, not always, obviously, but it does happen, and it does happen to guys too. So when it comes to sexuality, sexuality is this powerful force that's not really under people's control. At best, you can corral and rechannel it and keep it in safe bounds, but even that takes effort, significant effort. Like not cheating on your wife after you're bored with her after 10 or 20 years. That takes a certain amount of effort. Obviously, that effort's going to vary from guy to guy, Some guys find it very hard to not cheat. Other guys find it, fairly easy to not cheat, but still not perfectly easy. And it also depends on how many women the guy slept with before, he married this woman. If she's his only sexual partner, he's never slept with anyone else, it's going to be way easier. If he slept with, hundreds of women before her, it's going to be a lot harder to not cheat on her. And even though a guy has already channeled his sex drive into this non-destructive area, that is, his wife, it's still difficult to keep it in this safe pen, that is, within the bounds of marriage. So it's totally possible that the guys, against their will, in a live-in concubine commune, MGTOW commune, could develop feelings for the live-in concubine that they're sharing with the other guys, and then he would be competing over her with the other guys, and then there'd be fights and arguments and stuff like that. Or you got the live-in concubine who has feelings for one of the guys who she's sleeping with, and that same guy has feelings for her. And then the other two guys don't have feelings for her, and then she and him are, not just having sex, they're having couple sex. And then that makes it so that she doesn't want to sleep with the other two guys, and the guy doesn't want her sleeping with the other two guys either, because, they both have feelings for each other. And then, that means that, what, she's gonna, like, stop sleeping with the other two guys, and now they gotta, go find another live-in concubine to take her place. And then what? The guy and the girl are, like, going to be a couple, and they have to either leave the commune, or are you going to kick them out, or are you going to let them stay? But now it's a commune filled with, mostly MGTOW men, but some guys who are being monogamous as well. I mean, then it kind of, changes the whole dynamic of the commune and stuff, right? And then what are the other two guys going to do? They're going to get a concubine from the outside, but, why should they have to go to all that trouble to find another one just because this one guy stole their concubine away by developing feelings for her? You know what I'm saying? It would probably cause tons of arguments and fights and all kinds of problems. So I'm not sure the whole live-in concubines and the MGTOW commune thing would work either. So really, I think traditionalism, monogamy, is the only way to do things until we have companion bots that are as good as biological women, which probably won't be for another 100 to 200 years. Unless, of course, you're doing the live-in concubines commune thing with former prostitutes. Then the guys are much less likely to fall in love with her, and she's almost certainly not going to fall in love with them, right? So that could possibly work, but it would probably only work if they used, every live-in concubine was a former prostitute, But I think people should try it and see if it works, like with former prostitutes and with regular girls who want to be live-in concubines. Try it both ways and see what the odds of success are, like how much it becomes a problem and how often it doesn't become a problem, right? Maybe it'll become a problem so little of the time that it won't ruin the whole model. Or maybe just, it happening 10% of the time, or 5 or 3% of the time, where, the girl falls in love with one of the guys, and or one of the guys falls in love with the girl, and it causes problems. Maybe even just that happening 5% of the time would be enough to cause enough havoc in the community that it's just untenable. So you'd have to try it and see if it works. And if it works, great. But if it doesn't, give it up. Go back to monogamy and traditionalism. If live-in concubines in a MGTOW commune doesn't work, then it doesn't work. You got to do what works. That's the way it is, You got to do what works, and you got to do what works not just on an individual level or a small level, but preferably you definitely got to do what works on a society-wide level, or else you're just making society continue being non-functional, and therefore you're contributing to killing sprees, to war, to increasing government and corporate tyranny, to the resource depletion, which is putting the whole human race in danger of going extinct, etc. It's not moral to be a bigamist. It's not moral to be promiscuous either. It's not moral to do anything which is unsustainable, like, destroy the environment, or create fiat currency, or steal. Like, anything that is predatory, unsustainable, etc. And those two things, predatoriness and unsustainability, there's a huge overlap there, right? But anything which, is unsustainable makes for a non-functional society, and therefore it's unacceptable. Being promiscuous is just one of those things. Being promiscuous, taking more than your fair share of women, is as foolish as letting women be in the workforce, or as foolish as being evil in other ways. It's like encouraging your wife to work in a society where hardly any women work. Sure, your family is going to be richer, but it'll set a bad example that causes other women to enter the workforce as well. And then everyone's wages will go down, and then eventually women will have to work because of wages having dropped. Or it's like lying, if you're the only person who lies in a society and everyone else tells the truth always, then you have a massive advantage because you're the only one who lies. But once everyone else starts lying too, then there's no longer any advantage to lying anymore. Just like there's no longer any advantage to having your wife in the workforce if lots of other men are in the work, if lots of other women are in the workforce too, because it drives down both your wages, and thus she's working for free, basically, because now you're both working, but you're making no more money than you were making back when you, the husband, were the only one working. Right? Same thing with promiscuity. It's only an advantage until all men are trying to be promiscuous, because once all men are trying to be promiscuous, then only the top men, maybe only the top 10 to 20% of men can get women at all. And then the bottom 80 to 90% of men are incels, and then you get massive violence, and then it's not even worth it. You don't even have a functional society at all. And I don't mean functional in like a well-functional way. I mean functional at all. You have a totally non-functional society. It's like absolute violence and rape and chaos and theft every second. It's like you can't walk down the street without getting mugged or raped or killed or whatever. Like that's the kind of society you would have if 80 to 90% of men were incels. Right? It wouldn't be a society at all. It would be like, worse than caveman days. It would be absolute insanity. Evil, whether lying, promiscuity, women working, or any other form of evil, fiat currency, destruction of the environment, whatever, it's always predatory, and thus it's always unsustainable, and is thus always to the disadvantage of almost everyone over the long term. Men with common sense, intelligence, wisdom, etc., avoid evil because it's to their benefit to do so, especially over the long term, and it's definitely to their kids' and grandkids' benefit to be good, because if we're evil, if we let women work, if we lie, if we're promiscuous, then our kids and grandkids will pay a heavy price for that evil. We are paying a heavy price for the promiscuity and lack of masculinity, that is cowardice, failure to enforce the standard of monogamy, and no premarital sex, like the failure to enforce that standard by the men of 50 to 70 years ago, that is the cause of our suffering today. And the guys of the future, 50 years from now, are going to be paying an even heavier price if we continue being short-sighted and continue acting in ways that are evil. That is unsustainable and self-destructive over the long term, like promiscuity, fiat currency, etc. Evil is only individually advantageous, not advantageous to the whole species. But it's on a species-wide level, evil is disadvantageous. It puts the whole species at risk of going extinct. But even on an individual level, evil is only advantageous temporarily, once you're the only one being more evil than everybody else. But once your bad example spreads and everybody starts being evil, then you lose the advantage, and now being evil is all downside and no upside. At best, you can be on an even keel and not suffer much of a loss by being evil when everyone else is being evil. But then it's like, why are we all being evil when we get no advantage out of it? Especially considering it wastes money on war and propaganda and welfare, and it slows down the technological progress of all of mankind. Evil is basically all downside and no upside. It's like fool's gold. It glitters and it looks like gold, but it's not actually valuable like gold. And if you try to mine it, you'll just be wasting your time and money. And the very few people who do benefit by being evil are smart or cunning enough, or clever or charming enough, or good-looking enough, that they'd be able to succeed even by not being evil. So they're being evil for literally no reason whatsoever, and they're encouraging evil in others, and therefore when other people are evil and all of society becomes evil, then technological progress is massively slowed, and then that puts not only the whole whole human species in danger of going extinct, but it also makes it so that, even if we're not going to go extinct and technology does keep progressing, it's progressing much slower. So that by the time these, people are older, they're gonna be living in a country that has a way lower level of technological development than it would have been if everyone, especially them, had been moral. So then they have far less technological, far less cool technological toys to play with than if they had not been evil, but had instead focused on advancing technology and empowering the 99% of people, such as Satoshi did by creating Bitcoin. You see? So, and plus, imagine, all the health ailments that would have been cured with that higher level of technological development, and all the life extension that we could have if technology were more advanced. So these people, these talented but evil people, who are predatory, thieving, promiscuous, etc., these people, they're actually shortening their own lives, because technology would be way more advanced if they had not been evil and encouraged evil in the rest of the populace. And being more advanced, their own lives could have been extended. Maybe they get cancer when they're 70 years old, and that cancer can't be cured. Whereas if they had been good and had invested in R&D and encouraged morality in the populace, then technology would be way more advanced, and then they would have survived that cancer, right? Because there would have been far more advanced treatments for getting rid of that cancer, you see? So they're actually they're harming themselves. They're basically shooting themselves in the foot. even the evil people who get advantage out of being evil and can get away with it, even they are shooting themselves in the foot by being evil. And finally, I want to point out some propaganda in the commercial for that movie, Gretel and Hansel. It has blatant Illuminati symbolism in it. It shows like a door, I think it's a door, and it's got a triangle-shaped window or a cutout, and then maybe it's like one of those wooden windows where it's a little tiny door in the door, and it's like a triangle shape, and they show someone looking out through that triangle-shaped window. Right? This is clear eye in the triangle Illuminati symbolism, blatant Illuminati symbolism, just like they had a blatantly an eye and a cutout triangle in that Doritos commercial as well, not that long ago, pretty recently. That was also super blatant Illuminati symbolism. I think that's about all I had to say in this video. This has been Redshift. Peace.